Holy City Center Radio, this is episode 159, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, August 14th, 2023. Hot. The heat. It seemed like maybe we were going to have a little reprieve from it, but nope, it came roaring back. I hope you were all staying cool. It is tough to be outside for any length of time. I had a fairly quiet weekend. On Saturday, I met up with a friend of mine and her pup. I've only met her puppy once before, and so this was, a few months later, and she's so big. And it was great because we met at Fam's Brewing Company, the Familiari's pizza place on James Island. We were outside, and we didn't meet until like 7 p.m., so still sun is out, but it's on its way down, of course, and it's not as hot as it was in the middle of the day. But man, I was sweating like crazy just at 7 to 9 p.m. or, whatever we were there. And yeah, I couldn't believe how sweaty I was still at that time of day. But despite that, we had a good time. There was a gentleman there who had a dog with him, and he, for whatever reason, was super excited to chat us up, and I'm glad he did. Don't get me wrong. He had his dog kind of play with my friend's dog, and I was just in heaven. I'm sitting there at a pizza place, getting some pizza, playing with dogs. Not a bad little Saturday night, despite the heat and the sweating. And yes, of course, plenty of water was available, thanks to the great team at FAMS, bringing out dog bowls and dishes. Even though it seemed like people were making their own preparations if they brought their dogs there, but it was nice that they had all that stuff available to make sure the pups were staying cool too. So, yes, I hope you all stayed cool and didn't get all hot and sweaty like I did, doing nothing, just sitting and eating. And I hope if you've got pets and things, you're keeping them inside, keeping them in the cool, and just staying out of the heat as much as you can. Other than that, like I said, pretty quiet weekend, and looking forward to the coming week. Hopefully, it'll be a good one for all of you as well. But for now, let's get caught up on the news. Speaking of the heat, the National Weather Service issued excessive heat warnings for Charleston this past weekend, specifically on Sunday. You all probably, if you have any news alerts on your phones, you probably got them as well. And the alert, as of the recording, was set to expire at 8 p.m. on Sunday. So, again, even that late at night, the National Weather Service felt they should put out an excessive heat warning. So why are we talking about the heat from this past weekend? Well, because of, what was going on Sunday, Live 5 News put out a story saying that their meteorologists have declared what they call at their station first alert weather days through Tuesday. So basically, they're just saying they think this excessive heat is going to continue through Tuesday. So expect really high temperatures, humidity, all that good stuff today as well as on Tuesday. Live 5's team also said that today and Tuesday could see potential heat index values of around 115 degrees. Whew. And it feels like it sometimes, depending on if you're outside in the middle of the day with no shade, it can feel hotter than that. So yeah, just be prepared. Be careful out there. It was nothing super crazy out of the norm for Charleston in the summer. We know how to deal with heat, but good to have a reminder that it's going to be a little extra hot these next few days, and just be safe. And again, think of others, whether that's pets, making sure they're not outside long or at all if they don't need to be. And, maybe if you know anybody who doesn't have air conditioning, or, anybody who may need that extra help, just something to keep in mind over these next few days. There is a big update related to that mass shooting that occurred on the Isle of Palms. It was some news I think a lot of people weren't super sure was going to ever come after a few months had passed, but the Isle of Palms Police Department did make an arrest. They arrested Davion Bobby Delshawn Singleton, who is 18 years old, and he was arrested in connection to the shooting that happened in early April on the Isle of Palms. That shooting resulted in injuries to 5 victims. On this past Saturday morning, Singleton was in court for a hearing where he was denied bond. He faces 5 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, 1 count of unlawful carrying of a firearm, and 1 count of possession of a stolen vehicle. Court documents from the hearing show that it was Singleton who fired a Glock 25 9mm pistol that injured the 5 people that day. The judge in the case detailed those charges, and he says that they are so severe that the court had to deny bond, and that's exactly what happened. Some other things that came out from this hearing was that Singleton apparently posted photos on his social media accounts of the weapon that was used in the shooting. I'm sure this is how they worked their way into finding him and the owner of the gun and the weapon that injured those 5 people. So oh, by the way, that other charge, the stolen vehicle, that that kind of, you have all these charges related to a firearm, and all of a sudden there's this stolen vehicle charge as well. The court documents said he was driving a stolen white 2021 Toyota Camry on the way to the shooting. So that's where that charge came from. Now, Singleton has a court date scheduled for September 29th. So that'll be the next time we have an update on this case in all likelihood. But yeah, like I said, there was a couple of arrests somewhat shortly after the shooting, but no one was charged with, like attempted murder or any real like violent crime. The charges, if I remember correctly, were more so like unlawful possession of a weapon, things of that nature, just kids who had guns that shouldn't, but no one was actually charged with the shooting itself. And yeah, that was back in April. So it's been several months. 4 months, it seems a little bit longer than that, if I'm being honest, at least to me. But 4 months, that's a decent amount of time. And there really wasn't a lot of updates after those initial arrests. So I think a lot of people just kind of thought, hey, we're just never going to have a charge in this. And, no one's ever going to come forward and say who it was who fired the shots or if it was multiple people. And so I think that it kind of came out of nowhere. So it seems the police, how these things work with cases. They're obviously working every day on cases that the general public may have forgotten about. So appears they were putting in the work and finally had enough evidence that they were able to arrest Singleton and get some charges out there. So again, a bit of a surprise, but I think people will be happy to know that finally someone is being charged in that shooting. There was a really good story that the Associated Press put out that was predominantly about the Charleston area. Um, and I think it's just a really good piece. I'm going to read part of it, but I encourage you to click the note or the link in the show notes where you can read the entire article and get some more background on this topic. So here, I'm just going to read from it a little bit so you can get an idea what the piece is about. The Reverend Eliza Smalls Jr. once grew okra, butter beans, and other vegetables in the neighborhood where his family has lived near the South Carolina coast since not long after the Civil War. That was before new $500,000 homes in a nearby subdivision overwhelmed the drainage system. Runoff meant for the sewers, now pools in the 80-year-old veteran's backyard, making gardening impossible. Smalls and his relatives are among the many original families still living in historic settlement communities around Charleston. People who had been enslaved at Phillips Plantation bought patches of it to make their futures. Their descendants now question whether the next generation can afford to stay. All along the South Carolina coast, land owned by the descendants of enslaved people is being targeted by developers looking to make money on vacation getaways and new homes. From Myrtle Beach south to Hilton Head, Black landowners who inherited property have been embroiled in disputes with investors looking to capitalize on rising real estate values. So that ends to the first few paragraphs, the opening of the story. I think that gives you a good idea of what the rest of the article is about. It's in a sad but interesting and something that I think many people aren't aware of, but that this has been going on. Although a few cases have popped up in the news, when some celebrities have tried to assist some of these folks. So I think it's a good piece. Again, I think a lot of people maybe know a little bit about this story and the types of things that are happening, but maybe don't have a ton of details. I think this piece does a really good job of informing while also, as you heard in that intro, you know making the story have characters, people that, even though you may not know them or heard of them before, you can sense who they are as people and what they're going through. So, it goes on to talk about, in addition to all these, developers coming in and sometimes scooping up land at values, that is under what the value should have been because of legal maneuverings and things. There's also skyrocketing property taxes. I'm sure I don't have to tell many people about that, and that's hurting some of these families. There was another part of the story that mentions about how an investment company has sued one landowner. She has an acre of property, and they're suing her because they claim the corner of her screened-in porch, a shed, and a satellite ditch, or a dish rather, encroach on the construction project. So this company is working. They scooped up this land because of some kind of lawsuit. Again, you can go read the article for all the details. And although she has her land and was there before this investment company, for whatever reason, when they looked over the property, records or whatnot, they say, "Oh, this and this and this are on our property." Just let these, let this woman. I think she lives alone. According to the story, let this woman have her screened-in porch, shed, and satellite dish. I don't know why I want to keep saying ditch, on your property. Like, what is the big deal? She was there. It was her property to begin with, and maybe when they scooped up some of her family's land, maybe she had some of her property overlapping relatives and it wasn't a big deal. And I get that technically, maybe it's not her property now, but come on. Like, it's just ridiculous. These companies and things, they don't care. They just want to build their project, which is fine that they want to have whatever it is that they want to do with that property. That's their prerogative, but they will ignore and try to roll over just regular old people, to for these silly little things like, oh, you're on our property just a little bit. It's silly. And again, I should please read the article. It's really good. It's interesting. Provides a lot of explanations about why this type of stuff is happening and why, in particular, it's affecting the Black community. Substantially more than any others. So, a very good article. Definitely check it out. The Associated Press does a really good job of covering things nationally, but here in South Carolina as well. And our last story, some sad news to pass on. State Senator John Scott, a Democrat from Richland, who has been a state lawmaker since 1990, died on Sunday at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. He was just 69 years old. A email was sent on Friday night to senators letting them know about Scott's condition. His family had asked for prayers. Obviously, it looked like things were not going well. And so there, folks in the state Senate knew this may be coming. And yes, officially the news was passed on to on Sunday. You may remember that Scott's health was in the news earlier this year as he was dealing with blood clot issues. Don't know if that's related to what occurred on Saturday or Sunday when he officially passed, but that is something to note that it was in the news earlier this year. But more importantly, back to Scott and his career. He was first elected to the state house in 1990, as I mentioned at the top. He did serve 9 terms as a state representative before being elected to the state senate in 2008. He got reelected and ended up ultimately serving 4 terms. He most recently won reelection in 2020. He was running unopposed in that election. He's also a South Carolina State University graduate and was the owner of J.L. Scott Realty and C&S Consulting Group. So sad news. Obviously, prayers and thoughts are with his family, his friends, those that worked with him. By the time you hear this, you may have seen there's been multiple people putting out statements about his passing. Governor McMaster, the South Carolina Democratic Party, and a sad day for sure in South Carolina. And again, just hopefully the family is dealing with it as best as they can. Certainly a tough time. And that'll do it. You are all caught up on the latest news. I will be back with you on Wednesday. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. That way you don't miss any episodes. And while you're there, go ahead and maybe leave a little review, a like, or something. Just interact with the podcast in any way you can on whatever streaming platform you're listening on. That helps expand the podcast and lets other people have a chance to hear it. Thank you to Cole Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this episode. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode as well. And of course, thank you to all of you for listening. I hope you had a good weekend. Hope you stay cool and have fun this week. I will talk to you again on Wednesday. Until then, good night and good luck.